Okay, I got a Mitsubishi Canter, a 2015 4P10 engine, 4-cylinder. This guy had a random shutdown at a gas station a while ago, maybe 6 months ago. It was crank, no start, pulled the FPR. That's always the first thing I do, because if there's this has a CP4, basically. It's just a single pump head CP4. CP4s, as we all know, are garbage. They all grenade, especially with poor fuel quality, stuff like that. So pulled the FPR. It was full of metal, automatically knew as a fuel system, had it towed to my shop. Did CP4 replacement. I don't know what they call it, but for this guy, it was a injection pump replacement, lines, 4 new injectors, and then it ran great. Flushed the tank, changed the fuel filters, inspected everything, was good. So the guy ran it. He's been running maybe 20,000 miles or so. Had an issue where he wanted to change the oil. He thought it had a low oil light on the dash, which it wasn't. He replaced the oil on it, but he overfilled it when it started to run rough. And so it died on a hill. He towed it here. And then I've been trying to diagnose it. When you crank it, it sounds even. When you look on the computer, when you look on the computer screen, which you can't really see, it shows rail pressure. So I know it's not the injection pump. I pulled the fuel pressure regulator again. There was no metal on the screen, so I know it wasn't that. So it cranks even. It does have a little bit of blow by, but it cranks even. It has a little bit of blow by. It says it's got rail pressure, so it says it's got cam signal, so it says that therefore it should fire, right? There's nothing else it needs other than air, which with a squirt of, don't ever do this, I unplugged the glow plugs, but I did a little bit of starter fluid, and it coughs and fires over, but it doesn't really smoke. Now, I thought maybe the DPF was clogged because he overfilled it with oil and maybe it shoved it down in the exhaust system. That's not it, because I undid the exhaust system off of the manifold, and it still doesn't run, still doesn't start, but it does smoke a little bit, but very, very little. It's almost like there's no fuel injection. So I was like, okay, well, if I got fuel pressure, I got rail pressure, and the injectors should be firing, and there's no fault codes for injectors, so I'm gonna pull the injectors and see if they're firing. The tips of the injectors were covered in oil, which is kind of what I figured. Probably the crankcase ventilation pushed oil into the intake, down the intake valves, into the motor, and that caused problems. Well, what I found was probably when he did that, he was hydrolocking the cylinders, and you probably can't see it through the video, but this injector tip, which is like 10,000 miles old, let me see if I can zoom in here. Anyway, you can't really see it, but this injector tip was covered in oil. I wiped it off. It is straight. It is totally normal looking. This one, unfortunately, is mushroomed out super bad. So I'm pretty sure the plunger tip is seized in here. And here's the next test I did. I said, okay, well, if rail pressure is good, CP4 works, cam reference works, everything works, these injectors should fire outside of the head. Well, check this out. They're all plugged in, everything's hooked up normal. It's usually only number 1 and number 2. So only number 1 is firing. Number 2 is what I suspect. And don't worry about the liquid that you see flying out. I actually left a return line off and it put some fluid down in the cylinder. Totally fine. It'll just wash out and burn off once we get this thing running. But number 1 fires, number 2 doesn't. And I'm guessing number 3 and number 4 are probably swollen also. So in this case, it's most likely going to be injectors. I'm going to guess that, unfortunately, with a little bit of blow by and then overfilling with oil, I have a fear that the rings are smoked on this thing, but I won't know until I get the injectors running correctly. So unfortunately, these are like $500 a pop, I think, for the injectors. I'm going to probably try get these injectors out, and if the other 3 don't work, then I'll replace just 3. I'm concerned about the first one, but I need to cut costs to make sure the thing actually freaking runs first before I start dumping $2,000 in injectors and this, that, and the other. If the bottom end if the rings are roasted. If the rings are roasted, I'm not rebuilding the motor. It's going to cost way too much. I'll probably throw a used motor in for maybe $3 or $4,000 for the motor. A reman motor, 4P10, online with a warranty, with a core motor that I send back is 15 freaking grand just for the bottom, you know, oil pan to valve cover and nothing else. No intake runners, no exhaust, no turbos, no injection pump, no nothing. 15 freaking $1,000. So I got to figure out what's wrong first. Like I said, it could be uniform bad compression, but at this moment, it doesn't sound like bad compression. Normally you don't lose compression on 4 cylinders all at once at the same time. Could happen, I'm not there yet. So this is where I'm at. I don't have the right adapter for a compression test, but that would be my next thing to do. But I don't even need to do a compression if I know that the injectors are smoked. So we're either gonna have to replace them or warranty them, or we'll find out what happens, but that'll be maybe a different video. All right, injector 1, 2, 3, 4, and I don't know if you can tell, but it is definitely swollen, which is exactly what I was thinking happened. So 3 of the 4 injectors aren't spraying fuel, which means it's just not going to start. So that answers my question.